This is the Schutt F7 VTD. So this one's gonna be a little weird for me, and frankly, I'm the lineman guy on this channel, and not a lot of linemen wear this thing in the NFL right now. Probably I can count on one hand how many guys actually do. Having said that, I do know a lot about this helmet, and you should stick around all the way till the end, where I tell you guys why so many skill position guys like this helmet and why linemen don't. To start, Schutt has a lot of different models that build off this helmet. We have the VTD, which I have here. They also have the 2.0, not super common. We also have stuff like the UR1 and UR2, which are basically made to compete against Riddell's Precision Fit, mostly NFL guys. Now this VTD is gonna be their most popular model among amateur football. Basically think of it their direct competitor to the Riddell SpeedFlex. The easiest way you'll be able to tell this is by the price. Whenever you're looking on a site like Green Gridiron, you'll be able to see that the SpeedFlex and the F7 are both really comparable in price. I think this one right now is around like $500 and the SpeedFlex is as well, but prices have been going up and shifting a lot lately, so it's kind of hard to say when you're watching this video. Now the other model is going to be the Schutt F7 2.0. It's not super common. They basically designed that one to use in different studies just because different studies kind of impact helmets in different ways. So they've modified a couple things just to make sure they're still staying on the top of the leaderboards. The last two models are going to be the UR1 and UR2. Like I said, those are comparable to Riddell's Precision Fit, where they're basically going into these locker rooms and giving them custom padding. The UR1 and UR2 are the same thing. The UR2 is just for a bigger shell. Again, it all depends on the size of your head. Lane Johnson is in the UR1, while Jalen Smith is in the 2.0 actually. Now, if you didn't know, Riddell has the Precision Fit and the Precision Fit Diamond. That's where they take a 3D map of your head and basically design the pad specifically to fit around your head. The Precision Fit Diamond is just one level on top of that, where they're actually 3D printing those pads as well, and there's no air used. Schutt with their UR1 and UR2 has the same idea, except you basically give off a little bit of customization for a little bit more speed in production. Schutt has this blue conical liner on the inside, which has no air in it at all. Whereas my VTD basically has one thickness and one level of this conical structure all the way around the helmet. The UR1 and UR2, they basically get access to 3 different densities of this conical structure and also 3 different heights. So basically at each different panel of this conical structure as it works its way around the helmet, there's 9 different options. And again, Schutt uses their own mapping software to figure out what is going to be the best option for that player. So yes, you could argue that Riddell's is a more customizable option, but with Riddell, they have to scan it, send it away, get the pads made, and then get them back to you. Whereas with Schutt, they basically do it on site. It outputs the exact pads that you need. They slip those pads in, and then you're good to go on the same day. So yeah, it's not entirely customizable like Riddell's, but with this option, you can make changes every single day to your helmet and basically get the complete customized fit that you want for yourself without having to wait for them to be like sent away over and over again. So in that way, it does make it easier for a guy that does wear a Riddell and just wants to try out like a Schutt F7 for just like 1 or 2 practices. Enough about that, let's talk about the actual helmet in this video. This is the Schutt F7 VTD. Now, starting from the outside, the Schutt F7 looks drastically different than the Riddell SpeedFlex. Now, these plates on the top basically move independently from the rest of the shell and allows it to disperse rotational impact a lot better. They're made of a couple different layers. We do have a screw on the top, which pivots and allows it to stay in place while moving freely. We have another layer of the same as the shell. The top layer here is going to be the exact same material as the shell. And then underneath that, we also have a TPU liner, which helps absorb some of the impact too. Now, like I said, this is made for rotational impact. So head-on collisions, it doesn't do as much as some of the other options, but it's made for more of these glancing blows that are happening more with like receivers and DBs. On the outside, it's going to be a plastic molded structure just like every other helmet. Next big difference between the two is where Riddell has an air bladder system on the inside. Schutt F7 has their cone and bridge structure, and you can always tell that by the blue things that you always see sticking out. Now, on top of that cone and bridge structure, they do have like a small layer of padding, and you'll always be able to tell it because it has this like black and blue two-tone padding on the inside, where they basically have a little bit of like a foam layer on the inside just to give you a little bit of cushion on top of that cone and bridge. I find it really comfortable. Now, it is really hard to talk about like the safety of the helmet of the cone and bridge structure versus like Riddell's, because you can kind of go back and forth between those two. They're both rated as a 5-star helmet, so I'm not going to argue that at all. But one of the big differences that Schutt argues where theirs is better than Riddell's is going to be in cold weather conditions. Now, they basically argue that most of the NFL testing stuff is done at like a consistent temperature of around 75 degrees. But what they don't talk about is how it actually performs in the cold. Now, if you are relying heavily on like an air bladder and then a foam layer on top of that, those don't perform the best in the cold. There's gonna be 2 reasons. Think about when you get in a car seat and it's really cold. You feel how stiff and dense that car seat is, and it just doesn't feel like it fits to your body like it used to. That's gonna be the same thing when you do rely heavily on a foam. The foam just doesn't compare as well and fit as well to your head in the cold. The next is gonna be with your car tires. Think about how much air your tires lose when you actually are driving around in like sub-zero temperatures. The same thing happens here. You can easily lose some of the air within your helmet when you're dropping to those sub-zero temperatures. That's why Schutt prefers their cone and bridge structure. It doesn't change. It's always going to stay the exact same way and fit you the exact same way it always has. Now, with this liner, there are 2 bladders, but they're very small ones, and there's only 2 ports for them here, whereas Riddell has 3 on the top and 2 on the sides. Schutt just has 1 on the top here and then 1 on the very back. Fun fact, the only way that you'll actually be able to tell in the NFL if someone is wearing a VTD 2.0 or a UR1 is actually going to be on this back port if the port itself on the inside is black versus white. We have this external stabilizer right here, and then we have this internal stabilizer where the jaw pad attaches to. Speaking of jaw pads, Schutt does not use a air bladder system like Riddell. They just use a Velcro here, and if you do need to get a different fit, they give you a couple different size jaw pads and you can basically pop those in and out. Again, there's going to be pros and cons to both. Now, foam would arguably be more comfortable than something like an air bladder like Riddell's. However, foam does break down a lot faster. Having said that, because it does break down faster, it is cheaper to replace. Air-filled ones like Riddell can still be quite comfortable, but if they do get punctured, they are a lot more expensive and take more time to replace. Again, pros and cons to both. I do like these so far, and I do like how easy and quick it is that you can basically pop them out and try different sizes. Now, so far, everything we've talked about this helmet contributes to its overall safety scale on the gold standard right now for the NFL, and that's going to be the Virginia Tech helmet rating scale, where this thing scores a perfect 5 out of 5. The Riddell SpeedFlex does as well. The Trench does as well. To be honest, the scale's kind of off at this point. I think every helmet that they come out with scores a 5 out of 5. It needs to go to like 10 or 20 scales so that we actually start to see some differentiation between all these different helmets. Like technically, based on the score, this is actually the 9th highest ranked helmet, but it has the same safety score as that one there, so it's kind of confusing. Now, I don't know if you're familiar, but Riddell has their basically quick snaps together for your face mask, where it pops in from one side, you pressurize it, push it down, and then they pop together. Schutt has kind of like the same idea for something quick, except they're just called their quarter turns. All you actually need to do is you basically take these things here and you give them one quarter turn, and then they pop out just like that. So it looks like a screw from the outside, but like you said, it only takes literally, come on, pop it.
One eternity later.
These are really neat. You basically have the post on the backside, it has this groove in it. And then with that groove, you have this screw here, flathead, but then on it as well, there's like a little spring. And then there's basically this matching groove on the other side. So basically all you have to do is you literally just take this one groove, line it up with that in there, and you just push it down until you feel it click. And then once you know it's in the groove, you just twist it down, quarter turn, and you're done. Technically, it takes more time than Riddell's option, but I actually found when using these versus that, those can be a little bit finicky at times, where I actually found these quarter turns really reliable to just pop in and out really easy, quick. So if I could, I would actually convert my Riddell's to quarter turns. I find these really useful. Next thing we're going to talk about on this helmet is going to be the looks. I mean, I think it looks good. Visors do fit it well. Speaking of, the visor video for this helmet will be coming out next week. The face mask options are nice, and most skill guys definitely pull this thing off. Speaking of face masks, mine is an F7-TGOP-NB. What that stands for is it's an F7, meaning it fits the Schutt F7 style. The TGOP means the OGOP style, which means eye guards and oral protection here. Really common style for skill position guys. The T on the front of that actually stands for titanium. This is a titanium version of the mask. And then the NB, I'm not actually 100% sure, but again, we will have it linked in the description down below through Green Gridiron if you want to pick it up. Next thing we're going to talk about with this thing is going to be price. Now this thing is around $500, depending on where you look at it, which basically means it's going to be around the same price as Riddell SpeedFlex because they are direct competitors. So they'll price right next to each other, but it'll be around right now half the price of this Vices trench over my shoulder. Okay, this is why you stuck around. Why do so many skill position guys prefer this helmet, and why do almost no linemen wear it? Number one is going to be weight. Skill position guys love a small, snappy helmet where they can basically move around, feel super lightweight, and not feel constrained by any other weight on their body. This one is a little bit lighter than the SpeedFlex, and weight is just not as big of a factor to linemen. Next one is going to be tilt. Now this one is worn with a little more downward tilt than the Riddell SpeedFlex. That combined it with it being slightly higher sloped in the back or on the top of the crown of your head means it's a lot easier to look up and see footballs. Guys that need to be able to look up and high point balls like receivers, returners, and DBs prefer this helmet because it gives them a lot more range of motion and makes it a lot easier to look up and basically see where the ball's coming from and come down with it. Finally, it's going to be the tectonic plates versus Riddell's hex panel. The tectonic plates, like we mentioned, are a lot better for rotational and glancing blows like happens with most receivers and DBs. But again, it's not good for taking on impact right on the front of the shell. Linemen are mostly making head-on contact, which is why they prefer this hex panel on the front, which allows it to flex and absorb some of the impact here a lot better for them. In fact, Vices built off that same principle of protecting the front of the helmet for linemen, which is exactly why they came out with this Vices O2 trench. Now, why Lane Johnson still wears a UR1 at tackle, I have no idea. Overall, this is a fantastic helmet for skill position players. There's tons of face mask options. It fits a lot of different visors. It's really lightweight, and it's still reasonably priced compared to the Riddell SpeedFlex. If you want a helmet for yourself, I'll link it down below and you can pick it up. Any questions, leave those down below as well. I answer them all. All right, I'll check you next time.